Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. It's the first week of June, not quite summer yet, and it's supposed to be a quiet time on the Michigan athletics scene, but it is anything but quiet right now. Joining us in just a moment will be Orion Sang from the Detroit Free Press to talk Michigan hoops and even a little bit of football. First, some of my thoughts to get us started. Juwan Howard has been on the job for less than a week now, and he's been very busy. As most of you know by now, he has hired a very distinguished assistant head coach and reportedly is keeping Saddi Washington on staff and even added a New York Knicks assistant who is a Detroit guy who played with Jalen Rose at Southwestern. Soon we will need to get on the recruiting trail and see if he can fill at least 2 openings in the upcoming class. It's going to be interesting and very, very busy. As much as I like Juwan Howard, I have to admit he wasn't at the top of my list to replace Coach B. The reality is that the timing of Coach B's exit sort of trashed Ward Manuel's short list and took some big-time coaches off the board who might otherwise have been available. As John Bacon said in the Detroit News this week, even if some of the big names were available, they still wouldn't have checked all of the boxes in Michigan's coaching search. So Ward Manuel chose a candidate who has never been a head coach, but he checked off more boxes than anyone else, and he was, in the end, the best fit. Now, does that mean he's going to pick right up where Coach B left off? Probably not. But I do think his upside is huge, and in the end, he was the best choice, and he deserves time and our support. Beat writer Orion Sang from the Detroit Free Press joins us next on our Game Day segment to discuss Michigan hoops and a wee bit of football here on the Michigan Man in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Here with us on our Game Day segment on our very first show of June is Orion Sang from the Detroit Free Press. Been a while, Orion. Great to have you back with us.
Good to be back, Mike.
As you and I were mentioning before we started to tape, usually this time of the year you get a little bit of a lull before football camp starts, but not the case, and we know why with what happened 2 weeks ago when Coach B moved on to the NBA. We all know who the new head coach is, Juwan Howard. Orion, right away, people, analysts, experts were saying he's a first-time college head coach, so he needs to surround himself with some experienced college guys, maybe even a former head coach, and voila, we're taping Monday evening. New assistant coach is going to be Phil Martelli, who is a very accomplished coach from St. Joseph's, so very good move, I think, don't you?
I think this fits the mold, right? I mean, this Martelli, he had 24 years at St. Joseph's as a head coach. He had some really, really good years there. Obviously, I was a little young for some of those, but I do remember a little bit about Jameer Nelson. Not the most, but I do know that he was a good player. I do know St. Joseph's was number 1 that year. They had a hot start. They were undefeated. So on paper, this looks like a pretty good move. And it really satisfies everything that Juwan kind of needs from his assistants. As you said, he's a first-time college head coach, never coached in college before either. And Martelli is the type of hire that could really help Howard in terms of understanding the college game, understanding recruiting, even some X's and O's stuff, I think. So on the surface, it seems like a very solid hire.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I like about the hire is Martelli's 64 years old, so you're bringing him on board as you start your era at Michigan basketball. He's not going anywhere. He's, I'm sure, at his age, not looking for another head coaching job. So you would think he's going to stick around for a while.
I think at this point that might be speculation because I've never talked to Martelli before. I don't know him personally, so I'm not sure what his motivations are going forward. But he did say when he got fired at St. Joseph's in March, he did say that he still felt he has some coaching left to him. So we'll see. But yeah, he is on the older side, and that means he has a lot of experience, which is good for Michigan and Juwan Howard.
Well, as far as rounding out the staff goes, I don't know if it's official, but I've been reading that Knicks assistant Howard Isley is going to be offered if he hasn't already. A Detroit kid played with Jalen Rose at Detroit Southwestern. What do you think of him?
Yeah, so that's more of it seems like more of an unknown hire compared to Phil Martelli and Saddi, who was there last Thursday and who Isaiah Livers said would be on the staff, and other people have reported as well. Isley, his background is mostly in the NBA. He had a really long NBA career as a player, and he's been a coach there, I think, since 2010, as an assistant coach. So that one's a little bit more of an unknown. Like Juwan, he's never coached in college before, so we'll see what that adjustment is like for him. There's always going to be a transition when you're coming from NBA to college. I think the big question is whether he can help Michigan recruit in Detroit. He's from Detroit. He went to a famous high school. He has ties to, Jalen Rose. He had ties to Perry Watson, who was a former Southwestern coach who came to Michigan as an assistant coach under Steve Fisher during the Fab Five era. So we'll see if Howard Isley can maybe get Michigan into more recruitments in Detroit than they have been in the past. Michigan has also done a pretty decent job of recruiting the state. So we'll see how that goes going forward.
Well, and if you have Martelli on staff now, Howard Isley, maybe not officially yet, and then Sadi Washington, of course, sticking around, that alleviates, I think, a lot of concerns people had about Juwan surrounding himself with a very experienced college staff. Check that off. He's done a really good job there.
Yeah, I think it's a solid stuff. I do think it was maybe imperative is too strong of a word, but I do think it was a smart move to hire someone who had been on the staff previously with John Beilein, whether that was Sadi or Luke Yaklich or DeAndre Haynes. I think it was good to have that continuity and helping keep the roster intact. Obviously, all three of those guys had been recruiting already, the 2020 class, 2021 class, so they have ties to people, ties to prospects. So I think keeping Sadi is a pretty good move. Sadi's a good coach. There's no other way around it. He's a good coach. He developed Mo Wagner. He helped develop DJ Wilson. He developed John Teskey. He also was the interim head coach this past summer in Spain when John Beilein was recovering from his heart surgery. So I think Sadi's a very good coach. I think for Juwan, I think it was a good move to keep him on for sure.
Well, let's just double back here in the last 2 weeks to some of the stories we've been hearing and get your thoughts on them, Orion. One of them I found interesting was that Juwan had reportedly offered Luke Yaklich the chance to stay. Various reports say that Luke wanted that assistant head coach title added. Is that what you've heard too?
Brendan Quinn is really good at his job. He's incredible. So I did see that story, but I did not hear that. I would say he's got very solid sources there, though. Do
you think Luke was one of the candidates that was seriously considered for the job during this process, though?
Sure. He got an interview for a head coaching job along with Sadi, Juwan, and Ed Cooley. So when you're one of the guys who gets an actual interview with Ward Manuel, obviously, I think that means you're in contention for the job. I don't know where he was in the pecking order. I think Michigan went into this thinking that they would have a chance to persuade Ed Cooley to leave Providence for Michigan, and they interviewed him first, obviously, on that Monday of that week. So I don't know where Luke Yaklich fell in the pecking order, but he did get an interview, and he's been a solid assistant coach. So, he was in the running there for Michigan, obviously.
Well, Orion, you did a piece last week on how recruiting will have to come quickly for Juwan Howard, and I heard an interview, I think it was yesterday, maybe a day or so ago, with Tom Izzo on the Huge Show, where he said he was asked, what obstacles or what priorities does Juwan have to overcome and to learn? He said recruiting would be number one. Again, if this staff develops the way we're thinking and hearing it's going to, he understands that too, doesn't he?
Recruiting is definitely going to be the biggest adjustment for Juwan, more so than anything else, just because he's never done it before, really. He's gone through the process as a father. He went through it himself as a player, but he's never done it really as a college head coach, and that's a different beast altogether. And recruiting is the lifeblood of programs. It really, that's what it comes down to. You can go as far as your roster can carry you. So I think the biggest adjustment for Juwan is how quickly can he get going, because Michigan has 3 open scholarships for next season right now, and it's already pretty late. It's really late in the recruiting cycle for 2019. And it's also really the 2020 cycle, he doesn't have much time to get going there either, because kids will start signing in November in the early signing period, and they're taking official visits as soon as this weekend. So he has to get going quickly. That's basically why I wrote what I did last week, saying that he has to start ramping things up as soon as possible.
Well, he got going quickly in contacting Badgeman, making sure that he stayed with the program. So we still have a couple of openings. Any other players that you've heard of who might be close, or he's going to be able to keep or reel in?
Well, the big one is he'll have to make a call and maybe see if he can visit Jalen Wilson, who was a top-rated signee who asked for a release from his letter of intent and got it. I believe Jalen's currently in Chapel Hill for an official visit with North Carolina, and he visited Kansas as well. So he's reopened his recruitment. I think Michigan should definitely reach out to him and see if they can maybe get back into it. I'm not sure whether they have a good shot, but it's probably worth it. He does have some interesting ties to the Fab Five. He told me last summer after he committed to Michigan that his mom named him Jalen after Jalen Rose. So there's that tie right there. And obviously he was committed and signed to Michigan for such a long time. Maybe if Juwan can sell him on his vision for the program, Michigan can get back into things. But we'll see going forward what they choose to do. The other name is Franz Wagner, Mo's little brother, who's currently playing professionally in Germany. I believe I saw reports that Franz officially visited Ann Arbor the week that John Beilein left for Cleveland.
Yeah,
which has to be an interesting official visit for him, really. So we'll see if Michigan can get back in there. Because really it's going to come down to who they can get from the 2019 class. The grad transfer market is pretty picked over already. I know Michigan was in for Justin Pierce, and he picked North Carolina. That was before Beilein left. And Javian Cumberland picked Cincinnati today, too. And I think he was considering Michigan at one point as well. So the grad transfer market is a little slim right now. So I think if they're going to add anyone, it would probably have to come through the class of 2019.
Well, there's big work and quick work that needs to be done with this current class coming in. But also there has to be some anxiety amongst the returning players. There always is when there's a change like this. But for now, at least from what they say, the players really seem to be embracing the change, don't they?
Yeah. I think they're excited about it. Obviously, if you're at Michigan, you get a sense of the school's history if you're a player on that team, and they know all about the Fab Five. They know what Juwan Howard did here. So they were excited about him being their head coach. I think they did a good job of staying connected through the coaching search. We talked to them Thursday after Juwan's press conference, and many of the players mentioned that they stayed connected in Ann Arbor when the school was going through a coaching search, whether that was hanging out, working out together, or just simply texting, calling, FaceTiming each other. So I think that made a big difference in keeping everyone connected during the coaching search and in tune with what was going on. I think that's a big reason why you haven't seen any departures yet.
Well, Juwan's introductory presser, a lot of his former teammates were there, a lot of former Michigan players, period, in attendance. Most of them seemed to think he was a good hire, and, at least in that first year or early in the Juwan Howard era, that's going to be very important, that kind of support, isn't it?
Yeah. He'll have the backing of a lot of alumni. He already did for the job, and he'll have the unified support of the alumni going forward. I do think that plays a role. Obviously, it's not the greatest thing when there's a clash between the old guard and the new guard. Not that that's what you should base the hire off of course, but it's just one of those bonus points, if you get what I'm saying. So it definitely helps them, for sure.
I thought one of the interesting things at the presser was when Ward Manuel got up there, was almost immediately he made a reference to the fact that Juwan wasn't here to raise Fab Five banners, that he's here to coach the basketball team. That aside, the Fab Five reunion talk is going to be hard to get away from, isn't it?
Yeah, it will be. I mean, he was a part of it. Obviously, people care about it, so I think he'll be asked about it. Honestly, it's basically a distraction for the program at this point. It's really not about them at this point. But we'll see if they get together. Obviously, a lot has been said in recent years about getting all five of them back on campus at the same time. So we'll see if that happens. I'm not really sure. I don't know those guys. I've never talked to them, so I don't know how big those rifts are between each of them. But we will see if Juwan and his return to Michigan can get them back together for sure.
Well, a last question on Juwan before we move to some football talk, Orion. How important do you think it is to him and the future of the program that there not be much of a drop-off this year when it comes to, to wins and to losses and being competitive at the top of the Big Ten?
To be honest, I'm not sure how much it will matter. John Beilein's first year was not great. They didn't do very well. I think they were 10-22, and he was still able to get going. That's just a comparison there. I think the new coach, year one is commonly seen as a transition year, a bridge year. People give the new coach time to get his players in, his system in. And I think for Juwan, being a first-time head coach and a first-time college coach, I think that goes saying that he'll get that same leeway as well. The big thing is that if they can be competitive and win some games, that would help in recruiting. But either way, I think he's going to have a boost in recruiting just from his name recognition, his background, and being the new coach. There's that new coach shine often with these hires that really helps in recruiting.
Coming up right around the corner is football. Believe it or not, here we are. We're taping on June the 3rd. You have voluntary workouts coming up. The preseason magazines on the shelves and electronically will be out soon. So the hype's going to get started. So let's talk a little bit of football here. Chris Evans suspended for the year. That story came out over the weekend. I don't know if anyone's surprised with that, but I've always been sort of unclear as to why he's been suspended in the first place. But there's really no indication he's coming back even after the suspension is over, is there?
No. I think others have reported that he appealed, and I believe that appeal was denied based on what Jim said Sunday, although Jim wasn't in a mood to talk. So those comments were, I don't know, there was a little weird, probably not the right word to say it, but it was a different type of interaction. Either way, moving on to Chris, his status is unknown, but I think we've known for a while that he wouldn't play this year. I think that was the gist based on what they were saying in the spring. He wasn't on the team. He wasn't with school. So we'll see if he has a chance to come back. I've heard some things just from being a student at Michigan. I graduated this spring, but I was a student up until then. So I heard some things about it then. I'm not going to speculate, but it seems like he will not be with the team this spring, and he'll have to work his way back to school and everything.
Well, we'll see how that goes here in the next year. Then he's going to have a lot of time to think about a lot of things, it sounds like. One of the things, though, that everyone is excited about is our new offensive coordinator, Josh Gaddis. Everyone can't wait to see, what this speed and space offense looks like. You had a chance over the weekend to sit down and talk to Josh. Your impressions?
Yeah, so Josh Gaddis said this weekend that he's very pleased, very excited about the offense right now. It sounds like Michigan did a pretty solid job of installing most of the offense in the spring. And they have a few wrinkles left to install in fall camp, but he's pleased with the progress of the offense. He's excited about what it could be, and that's something he stressed really, is that right now he's excited about the potential, but he wants to see more, and he wants to see more from groups such as the receivers. He said that there's been a lot of hype about this receiver group, but as of now, they aren't close to what people have been saying about them, and he wants to see them take a step forward. Obviously, they were dealing with some injuries in the spring. Donovan Peoples-Jones missed all of the spring. Nico Collins missed most of it. Both of them are back. They're finally healthy now for Michigan, so we'll see if they can take a jump forward going into fall camp.
Yeah, I thought one of the interesting things that Josh said was that Tariq Black had to get over it when it came to the injuries. That maybe at this point, after 2 injuries, and he's missed a lot of football, there's no question about it. But now the next hurdle for him was maybe more mental. He did say that, didn't he?
He did, yeah. And I thought those comments were pretty insightful. And they honestly, you can empathize with them too. If you were in Tariq Black's situation, coming off 2 pretty catastrophic, pretty big injuries that cost you 17 of your first 26 collegiate games, I think those would be on the back of your mind. It's only natural to think about that. Anyone can relate to that, really. Just being worried about your health, being worried about getting back to full strength. And it's tough for him because he was on his way to becoming a really good player when he did get hurt as a freshman. And he sort of really hasn't gotten a chance to show what he can do since then. So we'll see if he can do it this season. It seems like he's getting close, to getting back to where he was. Obviously, based on Gaddis' comments, it's not all the way there yet. So they're hoping to see more improvement out of him heading into fall camp here.
Well, Orion, sitting down and talking to Josh Gaddis as you did over the weekend, you got to see a little bit of that offense. We all did in the spring game, but I think it was pretty vanilla as compared to what we're going to see in the fall. When you listen to him talk, he sounds really excited with all the talent that he has on this team. And for people to see what he can do. He really comes off that way, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. And I think that's no surprise given the personnel that Michigan returned. Brought back the bulk of the offense. They got a senior starting quarterback. They have a talented receivers core, talented offensive line, talented tight end group. The running backs room, it does seem thin on the outside, but Josh Gaddis was, of course, very complimentary of them Sunday. He says that he feels like they're in good shape at running back, and he listed off some names. He said they're excited about Christian Turner, True Wilson, Zach Charbonnet, Hassan Haskins, and Ben Van Sumeren, the latter two who switched over from defense to offense, and then apparently performed well this spring. So every position group on offense, it seems like Michigan is excited about.
Did he have much to say about his quarterback stable?
Yeah, so this is a story that will probably come out either tomorrow or the day after, but he says that there's really not that much drop-off in his mind between Shea, Dylan McCaffrey, Joe Milton. I asked him if Shea was seen as a clear favorite right now. I mean, the incumbent quarterback, because he did start every game last season. And Josh said that he wouldn't go so far as to say that. He kind of pumped the brakes, said that it'll still be a competition, which sounds like something Jim Harbaugh would say. Obviously, talk about meritocracy and open competition. I would be surprised if Shea wasn't the starter. I think he's the odds-on favorite. Based on what we saw in the spring, in a spring game, he seemed like the most prepared quarterback. He had a really good grasp of the offense, and he had a really good year last season, too.
Well, the early season start times were announced last week. The Ohio State start time, no surprise, 12 noon was also announced. I guess the surprise to me was the opener with Middle Tennessee State is a night game on BTN. I know we have 2 games I think we have to play at night at home this year, but that was a surprise to me.
Yeah, it's a little different than the past night games that they've hosted, but to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure what goes into the decisions for these night games. I'm not sure why they settled on Middle Tennessee State. I guess the only perception that I had is that it is a different type of game than the ones they've had in the past. Last year they had Wisconsin. The years before they had Minnesota and Michigan State, and then they've had Notre Dame in the past. So this is a little different, but it is week 1, so there should be plenty of excitement for that. I think obviously that is to be determined as we head into the season.
When you look at that October schedule, I was reading this last week, and it made sense that there are a lot of night games that we could be playing, and you never know until the season gets going, and they've got a couple of weeks prior to the game to tell you, okay, it's a night game, it's 3:30 kickoff, whatever it is. October, you look at that schedule, there could be quite a few night games there. I have a hunch that we didn't want to have Michigan State and Notre Dame in October, or that close together at any rate, and be night games at home.
Yeah, that could potentially be one of the reasons why, for sure. I did notice that as well.
So I guess it comes down to if we contractually have 2 night games and the opener is a night game, it's going to come down to Notre Dame or Michigan State. So that should be an interesting choice too.
I think it's at Michigan it's a little bit different than other schools, just because Michigan didn't really have night games until pretty recently, 2011, and they haven't really had that many since then. So I think it'll be interesting to see how night games are perceived by fans, by the school going forward, just because it wasn't really a thing until this past decade at Michigan.
Well, I guess in the coming weeks until the magazines and the hype really starts, recruiting is still going to be somewhat front and center. You've got visits coming up. You've got camps. Anything you've heard on the recruiting trail as far as maybe some commitments in the coming weeks?
If I did, I wouldn't want to reveal them and spoil anything publicly for the kid. But I was at the Best of the Midwest camp. I was there on Sunday, and there were a few kids who mentioned that they want to visit for June 21st. I think that's like the big recruiting weekend.
Yeah.
And then the 4-star tight end, Theo Johnson from Canada, from Windsor, Ontario, I think he wants to be there. He's obviously a top target for them. So they'll get some guys there for sure, some top targets in them.
My guest today has been Orion Sang from the Detroit Free Press. Always great to have you join us on the show, Orion. We look forward to getting you back during football season. So thanks for your time, and try to enjoy some summer before the schedule gets crazy again.
Yeah, it was great to be here. I'll do my best to enjoy summer. Take care. Thanks, Mike.
Quick Hits is next as we wrap it up for another week here on The Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. On Quick Hits today, the number 3 seed University of Michigan baseball team stormed back from an early deficit on Monday and dominated number 22 ranked Creighton 17-6 to win the Corvallis Regional and advance to the Super Regional round.
Michigan, now 44-19, advances to that super regional play as one of the final 16 teams left playing college baseball. The Wolverines will play number 1 ranked UCLA Friday through Sunday in LA. Game times for the series are to be announced. Michigan's last time in the Super Regionals came in 2007 when, ironically, the Wolverines advanced to play in Corvallis. It's been another great season for Michigan baseball, so congratulations to Coach Eric Bakich and the best of luck in the Super Regionals later this week against UCLA. A reminder again, we're on our summer schedule, which is 2 shows a month. We'll be back on June 19th, and Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports will be joining us to update recruiting and, of course, talk some football. In August, we'll get back to our weekly schedule as we prepare for the beginning of the season, and believe it or not, it is just right around the corner. If you get the show from iTunes, please take a minute to rate or comment on the program, and we thank you in advance for doing that. It's easier than ever to listen to the show wherever your busy summer travels take you. We are now on radio.com, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. You can also get our free show app from the Google Play and iTunes Store, so check it out. That will do it for another show. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!